Good Thursday to everybody in Com 785. Welcome to week Kaboom 9. It's been a while. I know I've been away. I haven't forgotten about you, but I've been away. I apologize. But I'm back now. And to get things off started right, the last of the last espresso. Don't want to drink it too close to Betty by time because, I need my beauty sleeping. Look at this face. Okay, I have been out of the office and preoccupied with wrapping up another class, an e-session where everything has to be done and out the door by July the 9th or something, okay? So you haven't seen an announcement from me, but you've been seeing the weekly readings and the weekly discussions. So this will go up in announcement. You'll see the video, okay? Couple of pieces of business to attend to before we start talking about what it is we've discussed. I have yet to grade your midterm exams, and the reason is there was a person that needed some accommodation in regards to the exam, and I think we're on the other side of that. So I have a habit of not posting answers because once I correct the exams, then they post up. I don't do that until everybody is finished because I don't want anybody, even the suspicion of, well, so and so had the opportunity to see the answers before they took the test, and I didn't have that, and we're not even going to get into that. Okay, so I will grade them probably this weekend and have that, and likewise, I will post your grades from your semester project. I have been reading through them. Okay, nicely done, everybody. In putting in the changes and putting it in there. Okay, so those are coming in the next day or two. Thank you so much for being patient. All right. Just scanning through your midterm exams, it looks like everybody did well. So good on you. I hope it was, what's the word? I was going to say enjoyable experience, but would you say that about an exam? I don't know. I hope it was a tolerable experience, right? And we'll repeat the same thing on the very end of the semester for a final exam. Okay, we have a little bit of catching up to do by way of discussion questions. All right. So we're going to take a look at week 7 right now, today. And then next week, we will take a look at week 8. I'll do 2 videos for you next week. We'll take a look at week 8 and week 9. Just as a preview, and I'll remind you of this again next week. During the week of blah, 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 what? The 21st of July. I will be plugging into Canvas in the class, but I won't be in the office each year towards the back end of July or the beginning of August, because that's when I get time. I go back to my boyhood home where my 80-year-old mother still lives, and I throw a whole bunch of tools into the back of my SUV and go do everything that needs to be done for mom's house. All right. And it's always a surprise, because mom tells me some things and she doesn't tell me some other things. So I know, for instance, this year, topping the list, the shower is not working in the upstairs bathroom. Why? I'll find out when I get there. The light in the lamppost out front of the house is not working. Why? I'll find out when I get there. And anything else. So although I will have access to my laptop and internet and all of that, I will not be holding office hours because I'm not going to be in the office. All right. So just heads up. I know that you worry about me. Okay, let's take a look at question number 7. Oh, I should say, and for this week, last week and this week, we're taking a look at social media. One of the things that I want you to look at this week and social media is, there's a lot of attention given to social media as a tool. This is what it is. This is how it works. It's like a pen or something. I'm just looking for a pen. Oh, not a pen. The pen. All right. Okay, that's great. That's great. But what's more important is asking the question of whether this tool is the right tool for a particular job. So if you wanted to, write something out that you could erase and write over it, this would not be the right tool because it's a pen. You would need a pencil. And that's one of the things that, in my experience working in the field, that gets left out or even just gets overlooked. Great. What does social media do? But the more relevant question is, whatever it is that it does, and you're going to, you look at that in week 8, is it the right fit for what needs to be done? And you're going to look at that this week in week 9. So that's where I want your head. Okay, let's take a look at the questions from week 7, because we'll go over this because these will be, included in your exam. What's the rule of reciprocity? Is there a demographic that's particularly susceptible to this rule? How might this knowledge concern specific? Actually, I think we already covered this because this was on the test, was it not? Because there is no demographic. I think I even had a tricky question for you. How does rejection then retreat technique work? Okay, you know what? Happy day. We've already done that. Let's take a look then, because you covered those really in getting ready for and taking the exam. Let's take a look at week 8. Okay, so you look at, I asked you to look at a graph in Wilson et al. On page 174. Okay. And by the way, this is, there's a little slang in here. Google foo, this means you getting online and using your highly refined search skills to find the thing that you need to find. Remember, and I've said this to you before, your challenge now in an information saturation age is not finding information, because it's everywhere. It literally is in the palm of your hand. Your challenge is sussing out, if I may use the vernacular, the difference between, beef and bologna, or truth and BS, right? Work on those skills. For those of you who don't know, the search engine Google was built on that very exercise. That is, how is it that you know that something is true? All right. Well, way back in the early 90s, a couple of guys at Stanford University, at Berkeley, excuse me, Sergio Brin and Larry Page. All right. They were wondering about this as well. Okay, it's like, how do you know when a source is reliable? And as the internet began to, I should say, as the World Wide Web, as content placed on the internet began to emerge, the question was, how can you tell whether information that you might stumble upon is factual? Because there was no gatekeeper to put stuff on the World Wide Web, and there still isn't. So they began creating a program that would, when you asked a question, when you threw something out there like, what's 2 + 2? All right, it would find places in which people had discussed 2 + 2, and then go backwards from those places to see how many times the person who had written about what 2 + 2 equals had been cited by others who said, yep, if you want to know what 2 + 2 is, go to this source. And it's a process called backtracking. In fact, the first version of Google that they created, they called, I think that, Google is the much better name. They called it Backrub, which just sounds weird. All right. And their backtracking approach is based on how academics verify that something is authoritative, or how academics themselves are verified as authoritative. How much have you published, and how many times and by whom has it been cited? So you say this in a published document, working, backwards. How many times has someone else said, yeah, I read, Dr. Gardner, and he knows what he's talking about? It's citation. So in its earliest days, Google worked purely on the number of citations as the means by which a search result was driven to the top of the page. Those days are long, long gone, and now it's pay to play. It's not what the most commonly agreed answer, which has its problems. It's called utilitarianism, and this is a notion that somehow if there's a plurality of agreement amongst people, then that might be the right answer. When you're dealing with strictly empirical matters, like say what 2 + 2 is, that works out fine. Okay, because you can have somebody says 3 and somebody says 5, but the answer is still going to be 4. All right, it works well for empirical matters. When it comes to social constructs, not so good. Not so good, because they launched Google in 1996. All right, so even without the pay to play, which completely distorts the results field, and they've had to tell you this is a paid advertisement. All right, at the top, and they, the word that's used is sponsored. Okay, but before that, even organic search results had their problems. They released Google in 1996. Let's just say they had released it in 1906. Okay, 90 years earlier. And someone had typed in, are people from Africa people? What might you have gotten? Well, when you consider at the turn of the century, around 1902, there was a man from the Congo, near the Congo River, who was captured, brought to New York, and put in the Bronx Zoo. His name was Ota Benga, and put on display for everybody to come and see. He was of short stature. I think by way of anthropological classification, he was pygmy. I'm not sure. And initially they put him in with the orangutans because, Africa, and which is, I look at that and I'm like, not only is it knuckle-headedly dehumanizing, there aren't any orangutans in Africa. It's an Asian primate species. Sorry to be nitpicky. Anyhow, they put him in there with them, and he promptly fashioned some weapons out of the various logs in there and killed them because, orangutans, primates are they're dangerous. They rip your face off. And then they're like, So they let him sort of wander around the zoo and talk, be an object of amusement for the people that came to the zoo. And there were some people, socially minded, who wrote into the New York Times saying, I'm not super comfy with keeping someone as an animal in a zoo, even though you let him wander around. The New York Times, people think of the New York Times as like this bastion of progressiveness. The New York Times responded in an editorial, "Oh, come on. Look at him. Do you really think he would be happier wandering around that nasty old steamy bug infested jungle. He's living the right life of Riley, to mix a couple of different cultures. He probably doesn't even know the difference. Yikes. So what if you asked that question 90 years ago? Would the consensus among the public and those who had access to the technology be the right answer? No. So what's my point? When I say Google Fu, like Kung Fu, I want you to exercise your ever highly refining search skills, the ones that get you past all the BS and get you to an authoritative answer. Yes, I realize that was a tremendously long tangential introduction to question number one, but extremely important. All right, exercising your Google Fu, do these social media usage patterns still hold true in 2025? Because this was, this graph was a wee old. Ben, you at the top are going to take you. Some of the info charts is already outdated. For example, age groups accounting for the most Facebook users being 25 to 29. Yeah, that according to 24 Pew study, that demographic has moved forward, which is something that we ought to expect, because if we move forward in time, the demographic that became attached to or associated its socializing activity with that platform, that social media application, Facebook, it moves with them. Okay, and that's why I asked the question. All right. So no, this is not. However, the chart is still correct when it comes to the largest group on Instagram. In both charts in the book and updated Pew research, the younger age groups are dominant in the space. This is true for, the same is true for X, or what used to be Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube. Okay, excellent answer. That's precisely what we're looking for. Question number two. Answer what is newsjacking? This is a technique that you could use. It's by way of ethics, it falls into the grayish area. But I can tell you it works. Now, what is newsjacking? Valerie, newsjacking is a strategic communication approach in which people or organizations insert comments, brand messages, promotional material into breaking news stories to garner media attention and public notice. The term, coined by marketing expert David Meerman Scott, refers to the technique of leveraging the popularity of news events to amplify one's message or exposure in real time. Okay. Yes, that's exactly it. Okay. Another application, as Ben points out, I know we grabbed one for you, Ben, but I'm going to get you again here now. Newsjacking is finding ways to make your organization part of a trending story that people are already talking about. So in addition to inserting products or brands, you try to insert yourself. Politicians do this a lot. Political organizations do this a lot. Corporate America, they've had varying success, because it's interesting. The public can be sensitive to someone who's trying to insert themselves into not necessarily a crisis, but something that's garnering a lot of public attention. And there was a Pepsi commercial. It's got to be many, many years back that just absolutely crashed and burned. That it was during, I think, the Occupy Wall Street movements, in which people were just sitting down saying, we're not moving till you do what exactly? Give us money. I'm not sure. And so there were confrontations with police and protesters, and Pepsi's like, hot damn, let's get on that. So they shot a commercial in which there were people screaming and holding signs that said nothing, like, we don't like it, or some sort of stupid generic slogan. And then out into the tumult, into the confrontation between the authorities and the righteous protesters, steps this girl, I think it was even a known actress, with a Pepsi. And she gives it to one of the officers, and everybody feels better. And the response from the public was, really? Seriously? Now, a rival soft drink company had tried something like that many decades earlier, Coca-Cola, and they put together a very, very famous jingle in which they had a chorus of people made up from archetypical representatives of various cultures. There's the Muslim guy dressed like a Muslim, and there's the it's funny because my family's from Holland, but there's the person from Holland, dressed with the woman with the pigtails that curl like this and the hat. And I was around Dutch people growing up my whole life. I never saw anybody dressed like that. And the only wooden shoes that I ever had were the decorative ones that got put out to be filled on St. Nicholas Day. But anyway, so you get the picture, okay? All these archetypal representations of culture. And they were all singing about how they would like to bring the world together by buying it a Coca-Cola, which was a very clever marketing technique because it was not bring all the world together by giving it a Coca-Cola, as if the Coca-Cola Corporation was going to be giving the soda away. Oh, no, no. This was this person from this culture buying one from the Coca-Cola Corporation, which was up here somewhere, and then giving it to another. In the case of Pepsi, it was an absolute train wreck. It just bombed. It did not work well. Okay. So be careful. Be careful if ever you find yourself tempted with such an opportunity. Question number 3, according to Cialdini, what else can be said about the universal principles of influence? Let's see. Who have we not pulled from and picked on yet? Okay, Kamisha, Kai. According to Cialdini, there's still more to be understood about universal principles of influence beyond the original 6. He emphasizes that the effectiveness of these principles can vary depending on the stage of the relationship or the situation. Yeah, so remember, when it comes to influence, okay, the application of the tool, timing, too early, too late, public mood, is as important as the tool itself. All right. When you're working in strategic communications, don't forget to pay attention to that. Okay. The principles can vary depending on stage of the relationship and the situation. That combining different principles at the right time can enhance their impact. For example, in early stages of interactions, principles like reciprocity and liking are more effective for building trust. Yeah, and so once you have the relationship, and it would seem weird if you've known somebody for years and you're like, you trust me, right? I mean, you're doing something that's the message. And I'm like, should I not trust you? Okay. As a relationship develops, social proof and authority become more influential in reducing uncertainty. Finally, when motivating actions, principles like consistency and scarcity are particularly powerful. Okay, good. Excellent, excellent. And there's, in fact, a lot that others of you did say and can be said. So make sure that you understand what Cialdini was saying, so you'll, have that right here when it comes time for the test. Question number 4. Okay. I gave you a quote from Lippmann. He to me is an interesting character. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he was up to. He was, we might call, I don't like the term, but I'm going to use it anyway. He is what we would call an elitist. He had a very poor view of the masses and what they did. And I gave you that quote on the midterm from him about, media and politics. And if you read, back to the text, if you read from whence the quote comes from, he's saying, look, media, the media and those who work in it are about as intelligent as a pack of hounds. In fact, their nose is always just about 2 inches from the ground. And they're always sniffing around for the latest, most rotten scrap that they can find, that they then tear to pieces, and then they just move on. The great, and I mean this by way of a media personality and a strategic communicator, Rush Limbaugh, who knew Lippmann well. I mean, he had read and studied him, tweaked that. And he referred to the tendency of the media just to show up, just make a mess by hyping up a story and then just to speed on off to the next thing. He called them drive-by media. So like drive-by shooting, they just show up, make an absolute wreck of the place, and then take off. Okay. So Lippmann to me is an interesting character. All right. But I give you a quote from Lippmann in which he says, "Where all think alike, no one thinks very much." I ask you, do you agree with this? Why or why not? And how might this phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance suggest that Lippmann, how might the phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance, this is from Cialdini, suggest that Lippmann was correct? Third, in your opinion, do the structure and the nature of social media platforms tend to amplify the phenomenon of the group non-think? Okay, so you notice I didn't say group think. And yeah, I'm bending the words here a little bit. The coming together in groups and just not thinking about things. Eating Tide laundry detergent pods, or huffing in tablespoons full of cinnamon, or whatever. Pick your TikTok trend. Okay, Cynthia, what'd you say? Yes, I completely agree with Waller Lippmann's statements. Where all think alike, no one thinks very much. When people conform simply because others do, we do a disservice not only to ourselves, but to society as a whole. This kind of mindset allows others to control our thinking and decision making. Okay. Now, see, here's the interesting thing. That you as strategic communicators need to be aware of, and it's something to ponder. So you're reading all this from Lippmann, from Cialdini, about how it is you get people to cooperate and these tendencies that they have, the tendency of the tendency of reciprocity, the tendency of liking, the tendency to follow those that they see as physically and intellectually fit, the tendency to give more of their attention and consent to people that they like. This grouping tendency that we have. Okay, that is a real thing. That's not a distortion of some human characteristic. That's hardwired into our behavior. Now, there are good anthropological reasons for this. All right, that we evolved as a highly, and look, and as a Christian, I'm not saying that there isn't a first mover, which is God. I'm saying that organisms change and adapt to their environment. Don't believe it? Go to a dog show. Okay, where did all of those, those different formations of Canis americanus, or wherever they're from, come from? Well, they came from directed pressure, breeders, pushing things in one direction or another. And I want to make this very clear. I'm gonna get back to the behavioral issue that we're talking about with Cialdini. That's the difference. That's where like the Richard Dawkins, they fall on their face because they have this. They can look around. We can clearly agree that things develop in a certain direction with pressure, like the breed of a dog, with a mindful selection of no, we're going to cross this one and this one, and huzzah, a dachshund, or huzzah, a Malamute husky. All right, they don't develop this way randomly. It's with guided force. That force in the grand scheme is what we call God. Okay, so when I say evolve, I mean that we have evolved as highly interdependent beings. That's what makes us human. So this is our natural tendency, is to be dependent and develop responses that keep us together in groups. That's the one thing. And then on the other thing, we have this social media that is amplifying that in a time in which we're like, you know what? With an open gate, there's no gatekeepers. Any bad actor can get in there and start encouraging the coming together and the behavior of groups. And heaven knows who those actors are and what they want. This is the challenge. Okay. This is the challenge that we have. We have, well, you got free speech rights, and how do we balance that against the willingness of bad actors to leverage these platforms to get people to act in a way that is advantageous to them, playing on those tendencies that keep us together in interdependence for their own selfish ends. The difference between communication and manipulation. So it's important as strategic communicators, that this goes on naturally All this stuff that Cialdini's talking about, these aren't superimposed behaviors. He's talking about tapping into the hardwired tendencies. Remember, what makes you the ethical strategic communicator that you want to become is keeping in mind an alignment between the ends and the means. What is it that we need to get done? How are we going to get it done? Not whatever we want to get done justifies however we're going to get it done. That's unethical. We don't do that. Okay. Let's take somebody else. What are their thoughts on Littman? Cinda. After reading chapter 4 of Influence, Science, and Practice, I do agree with Walter Lippmann. This is because of the dilemma presented by social proofs outlined by Cialdini. Okay, good point. Amongst the most heartbreaking social proof was the story of Catherine Genovese, who was killed in Queens, New York, March 1964. Even though 38 of her neighbors watched her being chased and stabbed by her attacker, no one called the police. The author explains that two New York-based psychology professors researched reports of this hideous incident discovered that the 38 witnesses took no action because there were so many witnesses present, none of whom took action. Yeah, and that's a very real thing. If you have a real serious emergency and your presupposition is, well, the more people around, the more likely I am to get help, you are fooling yourself. Unless you say or do something out of the norm for what they expect. It's like the car alarm. Who pays attention to that racket anymore? So unless you start screaming, fire, fire, your house is on fire, and then amongst the people standing around like, what, my house? I better go see. Unless you do something out of the norm, you're less likely to get help the more people that there are there, because everybody assumes that everybody else is going to be doing something, or worse. Back to you, Cinda. People are afraid to do something because they assume that somebody else who's there knows what the right thing is to do, and they don't want to make a mistake, even if that means saving your life. See, they're not thinking fundamentally about your life. And I'm not saying people are bad. They're thinking they're not thinking about how you appear to them. They're thinking about how they appear to everybody else, which could cost you your life. Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, I think Littman was correct, even though I'm not a big, huge Littman fan. And as Christians, as strategic communicators, this is something we have to be aware of. Of course, and the difficulty is being aware of the nature of the beast, the demos, the crowd, while not being condescending, while not looking down on, while not being self-righteous. Because once you start to learn and internalize this stuff, and then you put it into practice, and some of you are already as communicators, there's the temptation to go, oh, God, not the public again. Because remember, there is no public. It doesn't exist as this organism. It's big, but it's not like giraffe as a single thing. It's all of these individuals. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that in mind. Okay, everybody. I will have grades posted for you very soon, I promise. I'm sorry for the delay. There was method in my madness. Some of you have emailed me about delays in posting the answers to your questions. That's fine. Always bear in mind, though, just by way of coming and going rhythm, to be kind to your classmates. Post enough that they have enough to respond to. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so very, very much. I hope you're having a great rest of the semester. Would that we could have spent more time together in Virginia Beach, but that's how it goes. And, I think about you and I pray about you, and I will see you next week right here and on Canvas. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.